This is the demolition site of the Jishui Bridge in Jiangxi. With a series of loud explosions, the bridge that had only been in use for 20 years was destroyed in just 12 seconds. The local government claimed that due to its small underpass, insufficient height and narrow bridge deck, it was being demolished to make way for the Jiangxi and Guangdong Grand Canal and to improve traffic conditions on both sides of the Gan River in Jishui. A new Jishui Bridge will be built at the same location, expected to be completed and open to traffic by 2027. However, everyone knows that this demolition and construction is just to make the GDP figures look better. When it comes to public infrastructure like bridges, it serves as vanity projects for the government, so officials are quite willing to demolish and rebuild. But when it comes to public welfare projects like gas pipelines and water pipes, which are not visible, officials are reluctant to manage them. In March 2024, a gas pipeline explosion in Yanjiao, Hebei, caused 7 deaths and 27 injuries with a horrifying scene. The main cause of the explosion was the aging gas pipelines, and this has become a ticking time bomb in other cities. In recent years, China has faced many aging problems, including an aging population, aging housing, aging urban infrastructure, and aging railways. These all require reconstruction or repair. This has given new ideas to the government. Recently, there's a trend of renaming the, quote, Housing and Urban Rural Development Bureau to the Housing and Urban Renewal Bureau in many places. With the real estate market teetering and houses not selling, what can be done? The government has come up with a new idea for the real estate market in China, shifting from large-scale demolition and construction to large-scale repair and patching. The fundamental goal is still to make money. Previously, they made money by building new houses. Now that people can't afford new houses, the government changed the approach. For instance, many buildings over 20 years old need maintenance, so they use the name urban renewal to help with repairs and safety checks. Through collective investment from communities, the government helps with repairs, which is like after-sales service for your house. In Beijing's Dongcheng district, there is a 70-year-old building complex. It was built in 1952 and has 22 buildings considered dangerous. The residents believe these are first-degree hazardous buildings that must be demolished. Look at these walls. They crumble at a touch. Buildings 24 to 28 were built in 1956 and 1957, and the rest in 1952. These are all wooden structures, so they would burn down completely in a fire. As first-degree hazardous buildings, they must be demolished. The elderly refuse to move their belongings, so even if you clear them out, they're brought back the next day, making it impossible to clean. Look at this bathroom. When someone takes a shower upstairs, people downstairs need to use an umbrella. The pipes are all rotten. How many years has it been? The sewage pipes are clogged every day, replaced piece by piece. Living in these buildings is nerve-wracking each day. Fire safety requires daily inspections and maintenance, a massive workload. Residents have written a joint letter to the street office's urban construction section, but due to stringent review processes for demolition and reconstruction, they're still waiting for a response. The funding issue, whether the government will fund it or the residents will share the costs, needs to be resolved before proceeding. In Xiqing district, Beijing, a 70-year-old building is tilting and leaking, but the Housing and Urban Rural Development Office only suggested seismic reinforcement. However, residents believe that is not a long-term solution. They demanded a complete teardown and rebuild. Many houses built in the 1990s in China are now due for major repairs and renovations. As a result, the government encourages buying customized packages, which is essentially another way to keep profiting. They enforce a standard retirement age and renewal projects for buildings. For example, your house might need updated fireproof and waterproof materials, and you'll be required to purchase a custom package. You pay a portion and the government subsidizes the rest, thus leading to an era of extensive repairs. This is effectively a housing sales department. For instance, just like buying a TV, you won't buy multiple TVs at once and might replace one only after 10 years. Sellers can't continuously make money just by selling TVs, so they introduce add-ons like set-top, movie packages, or subscription channels. Over time, these add up to the cost of a new TV. This tactic is similar to the Housing and Urban Renewal Bureau. This is the post-real estate era trick the government is playing. Even with reduced down payments, houses still aren't selling, indicating a nationwide real estate downturn, but the government still needs money to operate. However, not all old buildings can be renewed. It depends on the location. For example, old neighborhoods in prosperous areas of Beijing directly affect the city's image, so they have to be renovated. In sparsely populated rural areas, these are not priority projects. For example, in Guangzhou, a 50-year-old building in Jishui Street became a hazardous building. Residents didn't dare live there, so the owners raised nearly 8 million yuan to demolish and rebuild it. The reconstruction cost averaged about 300,000 yuan per household. After multiple negotiations, an agreement was reached. Jishui Street has a prime location in Guangzhou's Old Town, Xinhua Street, and is close to Guangzhou North Station and the District People's Hospital, making it very convenient for travel and living. The owners raised about 8 million yuan by themselves to rebuild a new building on the same site. The number of floors, rooms, and internal area remain unchanged. Each owner contributes 300,000 yuan. After 48 rounds of communication, an agreement was reached. The government was pleased to see citizens raising funds for reconstruction, as they only had to provide coordination and zero funding assistance. Cities are developing and buildings are aging. This building, used for nearly 50 years, has exposed bricks, chaotic wiring, and inadequate fire prevention. An owner mentioned that the building's walls didn't use cement during construction, and the red bricks inside have long been moldy. It's impossible to drill holes for air conditioners or lights without causing surrounding bricks to crumble. Attempts to repaint the walls result in mold and black spots due to moisture after a few months. Original teardown and rebuild is a new concept in recent years, and the, quote, government coordination resident funding model is a new approach. With a declining real estate market, aging owners, generally low incomes, and difficulty in reaching consensus, advancing this model still faces significant resistance. As of the end of 2022, about 20% of China's urban housing has been in existence for over 30 years. Houses built in the 1990s account for 21%, the 2000s for 30%, and the 2010s for 35%. By around 2024, this value is expected to reach 80%. Currently, some communities built in the early days of last century have already become dangerous, with poor living experiences and safety hazards. According to the Housing and Urban Rural Development Bureau, there are over 30 billion square meters of existing housing in urban areas, totaling about 220 old neighborhoods needing renovation. Some are hazardous buildings, some have outdated designs, some have outdated layouts, and some lack sufficient sanitation. Statistics show that the total market value of urban renewal in China is about 500 trillion yuan, a significant amount. Residents worry that the 70-year land ownership period in China should not be a concern. The government currently targets 30 to 50-year-old buildings for renewal, but some buildings show problems even within 20 years. The purpose of housing renewal and urban development is not to solve residents' living problems, but to release land, improve city images, and boost the economy. So, it's easy to understand why the Housing Bureau changed its name. It's not just housing, but also urban infrastructure. Recently, heavy rains in southern China and the collapse of the Dongting Lake embankment have caused city flooding. While these are partly due to human factors, the aging urban drainage systems are also a problem. The most memorable is Jingzhou's heavy rain on July 20th. While extreme weather played a part, it also exposed the maintenance issues of old towns. The urgent need for renovation of old gas, water, sewage, heating, and drainage systems is apparent. In the foreseeable future, China will enter a post-infrastructure era dominated by repairs. Aging transportation infrastructure, like subways and bridges, is also becoming apparent. Issues such as road collapses, water pipe bursts, electrical and gas leaks, and severe erosion of bridge piers have gradually come to light in recent years. Some people say this is the negative result of the 20-year-long infrastructure leap forward. According to analysis, China's houses, roads, bridges, and railways will face numerous issues. Let's look at the high-speed rail. At the beginning of May, the public received bad news. High-speed rail prices are going up. 4 high-speed rail lines announced price increases, with an average hike of 20% and business class up by as much as 40%. China's high-speed rail that started in 2007 is now entering a period of major repairs. The China State Railway Group operates it, covering areas like Shanghai, Hangzhou, Wuhan, and Changsha, and include labor-exporting provinces like Hubei, Hunan, and Jiangxi. For instance, over 5 million people in Hunan live in Guangdong, and Hubei and Jiangxi also have 2 million people each in Guangdong. This means millions of people commute back and forth for work annually between their hometowns and cities like Guangzhou and Hangzhou, and they will all be affected by this price increase. Unfortunately, this is just the beginning. 20 years ago, when the infrastructure boom started, people in China were filled with pride. Few questioned where all the money came from. Most high-speed rails in China have been running at huge losses every year, far from being profitable. Media reports indicate that out of hundreds of high-speed rail lines, only 6 are profitable, while the rest are mostly empty. Currently, the debt has reached 6 trillion yuan, and expansions continue. A bigger problem is that maintenance costs for trains account for 2% of the total investment in China, but will gradually reach the international standard of 20%. Future travel costs on high-speed rail will significantly increase. Many might think that they can switch to driving, but China's highways are even older than its high-speed rails. Take the recent major collapse on the Meizhou Highway. No one was spared. The Meizhou Highway collapsed less than 10 years after completion. Officials determined that the collapse was due to a lack of maintenance combined with severe weather. Following the incident, online discussions emerged reflecting on the infrastructure leap forward. Comments like, quote, "the downsides of the leap forward are gradually showing," unquote, and, quote, "highly praised infrastructure has such a low lifespan," unquote, were common. People remarked that when things go well, it's called an infrastructure miracle. When things go wrong, it's a once-in-a-century disaster. A Weibo account, quote, "ancient knife," expressed concerns about the future decades, fearing that highways, high-rise buildings, elevators, and various pipelines could become ticking time bombs if maintenance is unaffordable. Another influencer, Sima Pingbang, remarked that being an infrastructure powerhouse is not eternal. Continuous construction is necessary for renewal, and relying on passive income is a path to failure. Statistics show that China has 5.25 million kilometers of highways, with a maintenance rate of 99.4%, indicating that nearly all roads have entered an aging maintenance stage. About 40% of China's bridges have been in use for over 20 years, with 30% of lower-tech bridges in poor condition and over 100,000 bridges classified as dangerous. However, as the saying goes, you can't make bricks without straw. Besides the rising tolls and fares, funding must come from government subsidies and investments from property developers and owners. Recently, urban renewal has gained attention, with the central government directly allocating over 10 billion yuan. The Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Housing and Urban-Rural Development have selected 15 pilot cities for urban renewal, such as Shanghai, Wuhan, Chongqing, and Chengdu, providing fixed subsidies for their renewal projects. They decided to focus on the renovation of old housing as the core component of promoting urban renewal. The government aims to explore new market-driven approaches for renovating dangerous and worn-out buildings, addressing prominent issues such as safety, inadequate facilities, and poor conditions. The goal is to continuously improve people's housing conditions and living environments. In the eastern regions, each city receives a subsidy amounting to no more than 800,000 million yuan. In the central regions, each city is allocated up to 1 billion yuan. In the western regions, each city can receive up to 1.2 billion yuan. Similarly, for municipalities, each one is granted a subsidy of up to 1.2 billion yuan. According to China Real Estate Research Center, 80% of China's top 100 real estate companies are involved in urban renewal, with over 50% handling projects exceeding 1 million square meters. This shows that even top real estate companies are participating in this economic trend. This video raises some questions about the real estate market transitioning from a period of development to maintenance. The main concern is whether the productivity of urban renewal can replace the GDP generated by new developments. On this topic, former Chongqing Mayor Huang Qifan once did some calculations. China has built and used 50 billion square meters of space. If we consider a 50-year depreciation period, this would create a demand for replacing 1 billion square meters annually, plus another 200 million square meters for other needs, leading to a baseline volume of 1.2 billion square meters. Some have suggested that this 1.2 billion square meters could correspond to 12 trillion yuan in GDP from urban renewal, implying each square meter generates 10,000 yuan in GDP. However, this calculation confuses an important concept. The real estate market, from land development to commercial housing market, drives 50 related industries, including construction, design, finance, brokerage services, and home appliances. In 2021, total commercial housing sales reached 18 trillion yuan, And considering the entire supply chain, the figure is much higher due to the multiplier effect. Urban renewal, on the other hand, mostly involves repairs and maintenance. Even with complete teardown and rebuild projects, most of the work is repeated on the same land, making it hard to drive 12 trillion yuan in GDP. Furthermore, urban renewal projects are more fragmented, smaller in scale and complex, with limited capacity. Their advancement effect is far below that of new developments. If the endgame for real estate is urban renewal, it may not support the many industries and workers dependent on it, leading to a lower economic development and eventually spiral into a dead end. Recently, the Jiangxi Bridge that is less than 6-year-old collapsed. This isn't just about needing repairs. It suggests that China's construction projects may be decommissioned within 10 years. The bridge and road failures are due to corruption among officials and contractors, exploitation at various levels, and substandard materials, leading to unsafe and shoddy projects that endanger lives. Who should be held accountable for this? Some Chinese people argue that reducing the number of civil servants is more important. They question whether renaming institutions has any real impact on economic development. Some suggest reducing civil servant numbers is more important than just renaming institutions. Official explanations often attribute issues to geological structures, rain erosion, construction quality, aging infrastructure, extreme weather, and floods. The infrastructure leap forward of previous years, with its substandard projects, is slowly coming to light, indicating that the Chinese government will face more than just housing and urban renewal challenges in the future.